meeting tonight. We're gonna start off with swearing in our newest member of planning and zoning, Keith Goodrich.
Good speak.
Yes, Steve.
Okay, I'm ready for you. So if you'll, and please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, Keith Goodstein,
I, Keith Goodson,
having been appointed to the office of planning and zoning,
having been appointed to the office of planning and zoning,
do solemnly swear that I will support,
do solemnly swear that I will support,
obey, and defend
obey, and defend
the Constitution of the United States
the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of Utah,
and the Constitution of the State of Utah,
and that I will discharge the duties of my office
and that I will discharge the duties of my office
with fidelity.
with fidelity.
If you just sign there, and I'll sign and you'll take it.
Okay. Now we have that done. Let's go ahead and start with roll call. Ren?
Here.
Tommy?
Here.
Lynn? Here. And Keith?
Here.
Okay. Let's start off by reviewing our minutes from our last meeting. We had our last meeting in March. I didn't see any changes that needed to be made. Did anyone else?
No.
If not, I'd entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
So moved.
That was Ren.
Second.
Second by Tommy. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Next, it looks like we got Lynn Snow.
Well, do you have that preliminary you can put up there or not?
Yeah. We have the most current, and I have the other documents
Okay.
in line with there.
This is a preliminary of some property over in Country Hills. It's over there near,
It's actually up on 200 South. Gordon developed those first houses along there. It's actually, I think it's Park Place that comes across underneath the park and it turns. And this is the first road that is coming off of that running to the south.
right.
Plans developing this parcel.
So it's a preliminary and I think there's 10 lots there and that's the whole piece that I own and then we're just developing the top end, the left part there. And to be honest, I have an agreement to develop to Mitch Coet, who's here, and so we're just. We've had, Jerry Allred did a plat on it years ago, a preliminary plat, and I had it signed, but never recorded it, but the requirements have changed, and so that's what the piece looks like today.
And so Lynn has submitted, or Jerry has prepared quite a few documents with it. They talked to Moon Lake, things that are required. We do not have the final construction drawings. That'll be part of the final plat, but the preliminary, we feel like he's met the requirements for that to proceed.
Can you put the other map up? I just want to see the road. Is it tying into the first?
Yes, there's a stub out right there, and,
And that, we've asked him,
Right.
if you look right
right there, skyline.
Okay.
See that stub out right?
Yeah, the sky.
this Skyline Drive, this is where they're coming off is here. And we've asked them to come over here. The street's gonna be a stub street. Eventually, this road coming here will be going here.
Mhm.
So actually, it ends right here and it'll be tying into this road once we're developed here.
Right.
So it doesn't have a cul-de-sac, but just so you know, it's
That's why I
designed.
was confused. There wasn't a cul-de-sac there.
Right. We're trying to get away from cul-de-sacs. emergency services have problems getting in and out of them, snow plow and everything else. So where at all possible, we're doing our best to get away from cul-de-sacs, and they work with us on this. So just so you know, eventually this road is gonna be finished here. You know, if you look at this right up here, there's another road right here. They'll be coming to it sometime possibly.
Right.
I don't know if you own that or not.
I own
think you
it.
do.
I don't know.
So eventually this parcel might be here as Lynn develops things, but this is where it's designed to go, just so you're aware.
So on the note of emergency vehicles, since it's not gonna have a cul-de-sac, how will emergency vehicle turn around?
They can actually come through the dirt road, but we have several other substreets with design to loop in or out in the future. So it's kosher.
Anyway, that's the. Well,
Can you go back to the other map too, sorry? Cool.
All right. Any other questions from the board?
I have a question, well, I think that was 340 south on the bottom of the map there. Will any curb and gutter be put along that or just along Skyline Drive?
Well, not a lot.
That road is not being developed right now. I think it's designed to actually, at this point, I think the construction drawings, it shows, you see this round here? I think it's designed to go to this point. What time this road is developed, this will
Have to be adapted.
have to be finished right here. It's designed to
Just be
go
a
right to that
cul-de-sac in the
point.
dirt there now.
Yes.
You can just come out onto that, the road is already out there, just beyond it.
You know, hopefully the residents go in and out, but people use this road.
Yeah.
And this one down here all the time too, but it's designed for them to basically go in and out of here so they don't have.
There's a big deep sewer line that runs through it from west to east and.
And if you notice, it's shown here and Jerry has included these.
Yeah.
On
That's,
this.
that's where the sewer
For that
line
also.
goes, continues on.
The new road will have curb and gutter though, right?
The new road will have curb gutter and sidewalk. And fire hydrants, lights. This is not showing the fire hydrant lights, that's part of the construction drawings that will have to be done on Jerry.
And what's already, the road that's already stubbed in already has curb and gutter and stuff?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, cool.
Anything else? If not, I'd entertain the motion on this one.
Second.
I'd entertain a motion. Who's making a motion?
I'll make the motion.
To approve as is?
Approve that is.
Okay, motion by Tommy to approve. We have a second.
I would second that.
Second from Keith. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed?
Raise your hand.
Let abstain since it's.
I.
Get that in there, so.
Yes.
Then they abstain.
Do you have a special?
He has it there.
That's right.
Just for everybody's information, this document doesn't get recorded with the county recorder. It's a document with the city that we've approved it, and it begins a 12-month period for them to do the final.
It's a different pen, it's squeaky. I'll let you have it.
You don't even handle this.
Yeah.
Have a digital copy if let's get one, but maybe that's. I can get one from Jerry.
Yeah.
I can send it.
I can forward you because they sent me a digital copy.
Okay.
So we'll have it there.
Okay, next up, we have grad night, urban guest requirement. Who's leading this? Venus, you cooked up or?
So. I was gonna say. Who's gonna lead it? Who's gonna start?
So I was just going, I'm only getting, that's part of the reason I'm here, so I was just going to follow up with what I found once.
Okay.
What you did.
Okay. Let me just introduce what Brad's doing here. So the parcel on the screen there, how many acres, Brad, do we have there?
So we have 60 acres,
60 acres and there'll be 5 acre parcels.
5 acre parcels.
So this would be county right now. We're looking to annex this into Roosevelt City. So Brad has come to us with his preliminary plan to make 5 acre parcel industrial lots. And we discussed curb gutter, we discussed the lighting, and we'll let Brad follow up with that. If you have anything else to add, Brad?
I don't, we have sewer to this point right here behind this line. So that's gonna come halfway down, run a road all the way up here. And then we're gonna make it big enough cul-de-sac to where the fire engines and whatever can turn around.
Contradicting what Dean just said.
Contradicting?
It's different applications.
Yeah. So I definitely would like to bring the sewer. I think it'd be a benefit to the city to have these lots in Roosevelt City. The road needs to be paved without a doubt, but the curb and gutter, I'd like to see if they could not rezone it, but make new ordinances for commercial, industrial 5 acre lots. I mean, everything down here, there's nothing in the area that has curb and gutter at all.
I guess I'd like to address that. You know, I'm with Brad on this. You know, when you require curb and gutter on these larger lots, then you've got to have a place for it to drain to, and you've got to.
Well, exactly. And if we go back to the map, I don't know if I touched something there.
And
No, they're playing.
So the water would be draining right down towards the airport road, the 3000 west. I mean, we could, and it's got a big bar ditch in itself there that we could put some rock and, but if we put a gutter down there, we're gonna take all the water right towards there where if we pave it. None of these other, and I mean, that was probably done years ago. I mean, so this road's no paving, no curb and gutter. I mean, that's an old county road, but the water runs off on each lot.
I like, think of Gale's Acres, you know, I mean, there's not gutter in there. I have a property in Enterprise, and, you know, Enterprise City, they look at it and say, you know, if we require curb and gutter on these larger lots, then we've got to have a drain for it. And there's extra things, and otherwise, if you go down State Street there from Highway 40 for a while, there's no curb and gutter, and the water just runs off and dissipates, and I just think I think we need to look at that for larger lots.
Okay.
Is it going to be residential or is it going to be
It's gonna be industrial.
industrial?
Yep.
I don't know what JR is, but basically, I
Yeah,
know
no
Brad, he can
problem.
come in and make a statement. We're not gonna take any actions
Right.
as zoning on this today.
Right.
This is a
It's a
statement that everybody's
discussion.
thinking.
Right.
And,
So I'd like to get your guys' opinion or whatever, and then next week I have a meeting
we're
with,
not gonna give an opinion on this.
What we'll do is we gotta hear what else others have to say.
Sounds good.
It's gotta go to council.
Right. Sorry, that was the attorney.
Oh, guess that was important to call.
So, anyway, I'll just speak to it a little bit. So, Brad called me about this as well and was wondering, you know, what to do. Obviously, can you bring up our standard? This is what I wanted to bring up to Planning and Zoning Commission, because we do have a standard for subdivisions, but there is no distinction between residential, commercial, industrial. And so we just have one size fits all, which on the residential, I think this is absolutely what we want to do, and no doubt about it. But if you look in our Title 17 where it says zoning, there is no, there's not anything spelled out as to what to expect in that either. And so when Brad called, I started doing some research and found those. It does allow for, in 16-100, or 16, let's see.
16,600.
Yeah, 16-6-100. Can you go down to that? Right there. So this is kind of where we saw curb and gutters falling in place. And again, it doesn't distinguish anything between the different zones. So I feel like, and that's why I wanted to come before the planning and zoning with this issue as well, is to see, like Brad said, do we want to amend ordinances and so that they are specific to zoning, or do we want to just leave it at, one size fits all thing? Which I think,
Like we looked up the other day, the thing with 16,6-100 says that sidewalk, curb, gutter shall be provided on both sides of all public streets, and it goes on. The kicker is council, so not us, but council may grant an exception for any or all of the above improvements based on subdivision's geographical location or site conditions.
correct.
So it takes it out of our hands and it puts it in council's if we leave it as is. It's the council that would decide this.
And the council would make the ultimate decision either way, whether we did an ordinance change or whether we did this. But we would still want a recommendation from the planning and zoning. So here's a couple things that I talked to our city attorney about as well. Because Brad is right, we have 2 streets that were paved down there in the last 5 years, I would say. One that runs along in front of Mountain Land Supply, and then jogs over to 3000 West, and then this one that was put in went Stratford. Neither one were required curb and gutter at the time. In fact, it never even made it to council or planning and zoning. So I'm not sure exactly what happened there, but it was overlooked for some reason at the time. So we're in a little bit of a conundrum because we haven't required it in the past. If it's something that we want to require, we can do that. However, here's the way I feel like, in talking with the attorney, that we should try to handle it. Either we make an exception on this one, due to the circumstances, which can be done through our ordinances. Or if we do want to enforce curb and gutter, then we can do that, but we also go back retroactively to those other streets and we create a special assessment district and get the curb and gutter put in as well, so that it's all standard. And then I still think we need to look at our ordinance and clarify whether we want a one-size-fits-all approach or we want a little different
zone-based.
Yeah, zone-based approach, which I feel like a zone-based approach is better because then you don't have, I would like to strike that council may grant an exception part right out of there. And let's build an ordinance that fits 95% of our circumstances and then just go with it. So we're not making exceptions, we're following our rules. That makes sense?
The exceptions are hard to justify too when you have.
Yeah,
This is a perfect example.
This guy didn't, and so it causes more problems down the road.
This is a perfect example of why we have to adhere to our ordinances. If we do something different, instead of making an exception, we change our ordinance so that everybody gets treated the same from that point on. And then we try to rectify, if we can, those other areas, like I had mentioned, with special assessments or something like that, to try to put in the infrastructure to match what we're currently doing. And I get the retainment, that is normally water storage or retainment is, it falls upon the property owner to maintain their own water. And so that's always gonna be an issue. It is a little bit easier and the size of the lots. I mean, it can go either way. I just trying to get the facts out there. And what I'm asking for is some recommendation that we could go to the council with, and then also not to let this ball drop and continue trying to reform those ordinances and get them how they need to be. Yeah,
I think there's one thing that I'd be at is when those particular subdivisions, the one down by Mount Lynn and 1600 were developed, somebody gave them permission not even to blacktop the roads. So the roads were an afterthought. The city came in and cooperated with to get asphalt in those. So it was just not, we didn't do curb and gutter. There was no asphalt requirement whatsoever, and it should have been at that time. So the city was kind of making up dollars, but generally, right, we need to do something and everybody needs to do it. But just, I know there's some new members here and they're just not aware that asphalt was not even required and overdone.
and that was the first mistake, that was allowed to be developed without an asphalt. And then it had to be retro. Luckily, when Strata went in, they were required and they did put the road in, but there were several businesses along that road that had already built that didn't, and they didn't have to put that asphalt in. So we're trying to get up to current, so we want to know where our standards at and go from there.
You know, I've been recently over some of the, out in the coves and subdivisions we did, years ago. And, I mean, they have city water, they don't have sewer, but, you know, when you have larger lots and then the road goes like this, I mean, to have a curb and gutter, you gotta have a constant grade in the darn thing. And some of those would be impossible to do, you know, almost. And I just think that we ought to think about whether we want to have a place where lots could be in the city, property could be in the city, and it could be larger lots, and they could have pavement, but they wouldn't have to have curb and gutter. I mean, that's what the city of Enterprise has basically said. You know, if you do, well, you've got to handle all that drainage and, you know, have a place for it to go, and it's just easier to let it, you know, let it go off the road and have the road paved and have it great so it gets off the road, but then you have groundwork to dissipate into.
And one other comment too, actually, it's really to have a curb and gutter installed. Normally with curb and gutter, like you were saying, you get those dips in the road and things like that. You have a storm drain system that you install grates and things like that at low points, and it takes the water away. So that is a good point. The other thought that I had, I already forgot what it was, but I'm sure it'll come back. But it was a good one too. Oh, is the reason that I've heard for the curb and gutter at this point is because it protects the shoulders of the road. And so I think what Roosevelt City's looking at is not only some water mitigation, but when we take the O&M on after the subdivision's built, you know, if those shoulders start to break off and things like that, I mean, that's something that we'll be responsible in the long term. I don't know how much of a concern that is. I'm just trying to throw out all of the information.
When you get a lot that has, you know, let's say it had 300 foot of frontage, that this is impossible to do that in the city, you know, larger lot.
It should be noted
on, for example, 121 goes up past my house. I look at those shoulders, wish they were 3 feet wider every day so that it's a safer route, right? But on major highways, they don't have curb and gutter to catch water or to protect that shoulder. But I don't see a lot of those sloughing off. What do they do?
Well, in our city requirements, when you get into our construction standards, if you do not put in curb and gutter, you're required to have 10-foot shoulders on each side of the road.
Okay.
In our construction standards. So there's a trade-off there. Then if not, it's required a 10-foot shoulder on each side of the road.
And how wide is the road being proposed already?
Well, the road here, we'd have to look at it. I don't believe this is a residential road, so we probably bump up to a minimum of 66 foot wide, but that includes curb gutter and sidewalk. So the asphalt itself, less than 10 feet, 66, it would be at least 46 feet wide, probably. And that would be determined, probably by our engineering staff, whether it would be considered a collector or a serial.
Okay.
But it would not be a residential.
And I think so Brad, one of your questions was, well, he's wondering whether or not to annex him or just stay in the county, depending on what is required. And so I told him to come tonight and see what the Planning and Zoning Commission's thoughts were behind it, whether we want to change some more zoning ordinances, how we wanted to handle that moving forward so that he could make a decision from here on out. I don't know what it'd be like to have your road 10 foot or have 10-foot shoulders on each side and those types of things, or if that would even be required. But he's trying to get a feeling, because if the annex is, obviously it's going to take, my guess is if we're really efficient, probably 3 months to annex that parcel in. If we can get a consensus of the Planning and Zoning Commission and also the council which direction to go, then he can make that decision. And if it is to annex in, then if we do change things or create different ordinances or whatever, not create different, modify our ordinances, then we can do that along the process. And by the time annexation happens, ordinances can be matching what we actually want to see there. And then, we just move forward. And so that's why, so we have those 3 options, just to make the exception, which I don't know if we make, I'm indifferent, to be honest with you, other than it's really, at some point we have to, if we're going to have an ordinance, we have to follow it. And why it hasn't been followed in the past is very frustrating. And if we're going to make somebody follow it now, then we need to make sure it's retroactive. And so that it's fair for everyone. And if we're not going to do that, then we shouldn't expect anybody else to do it. That's my feeling.
I agree. My neighbor, Gilly, is struggling with this right now. We want him to put in curb and sidewalk, and nobody left to the right of him has it done.
Curb is there, just.
Curb is there, sidewalks not. Curbs, it's a little shifty, but it's there. The sidewalk's not there.
But we do have a sidewalk mandate. If you remember, somebody split their property off and reported that they were required to put a sidewalk in the past.
Correct. And we have mandated that. I get why that's in place.
I'm just saying, he
Yeah.
is frustrated that he's gonna be the only one on that street, basically, with the sidewalk.
But he won't be the only one that will put in a sidewalk when he's developed a piece of property. Everybody else has been required to do that. So if we give him an exception, then that opens the door for,
Exit.
Then
Yeah.
moving forward,
Yeah.
we still have to do acceptance.
That's where I'm a little stuck here, is at some point, somebody has to start doing the curb and gutter and sidewalk.
Yeah. And in an industrial, and this is my opinion, so tell you this, I don't represent the council, I don't represent our attorney, I don't represent Roosevelt City, I just represent me personally. In the industrial area, I personally don't think sidewalks are, especially with a 5-acre lot, I don't think sidewalks are necessary. Curb and gutter, if we have somewhere for water to go and things, yeah, maybe. But I don't treat that the same as a subdivision with 30-acre lots where I lived I live down the street from where you live now, Lynn, and there's no sidewalks in that subdivision. And when I built my house, I was going to put one in my front just because I'm like, what in the heck? There's nowhere for anyone to walk, and this is one of the nicest subdivisions in town. And it was, for whatever reason, allowed to be built without.
Well,
And that's where I go, future state of that
but-
industrial
but-
park.
the city is the one that originally did the road.
I know it. And
And they allowed the exception for themselves, and
that's why I say this is,
everybody else, we were required to do everything different than the city was doing, and they weren't required to do what they were requiring us to do.
that is frustrating.
And Dean mentioned before, he wanted street lighting up this road. So if I bring a power pole up and stick a light off the power pole, is that adequate, or do you want
Well, this
the
is.
street lights that you see on Main Street?
We haven't got into this because there's lots going to be involved in this subdivision.
Yeah.
Of course, type of road that's there, that is up to our engineering staff. You have, we talked, and lighting is an issue. It would probably end up being, and I'm not gonna, this all comes with the engineering drawings. So a good sense rule is at the crossroads where the airport is.
Okay.
And at the end, and just for your information, cul-de-sacs are not allowed anything longer than 450 feet, so we're gonna have to have an out on the other end. So maybe we have a street light at each end and at the turn. A good sense rule, we don't need it all the way.
Is that
But-
street
but it
lighting in our
says-
ordinance, Dean?
What's that?
Is that street lighting in our ordinance as well?
Yes, it is. It says to be determined, by the project. It doesn't give a particular length where it has to be, but we kind of discussed it after the fact. But there's a lot of things on this subdivision that you're gonna have to do, just not this and that, just be aware.
Sure.
When you annex in, there's a whole lot of specs in there, and construction standards and everything else that's gonna have to be followed.
And that's a good point that was brought up, because Brad did mention that to me too, and so I looked through the rest of the subdivisions and I haven't seen any. So that's, we're
Is
talking,
there
we're
somewhere
swallowing that
separate
pretty
with
hefty.
design standards that,
Well, it's like road standards. You can't put a residential road with this heavy traffic.
Oh, yeah.
16 is gonna be right now, so the standard's not gonna be 3.5 inches of asphalt.
Sure.
And a light grade. I mean, there's other things that have to be looked at. This will be done by our engineering,
What,
people that are representing us.
I agree, and then those standards, because if they're not spelled out in our zones or in our ordinances, have the tendency to fluctuate.
willy-nilly.
And that's why I'm saying, I'd like to see what the pulse of the commission is, which direction to go, mainly so that Brad can make a decision based on that. And then we will have quite a bit of work to do on these ordinances, is what we're going to require, and come to a really good solution. But that way, at least he knows the direction we're heading, so he knows whether to annex in or not. And if so, then we have ample time to work through these ordinances and then specify some of this stuff in our ordinances so that the next time this comes up, it's a very easy, streamlined decision.
I lean towards specifying zones where things are required. I really don't like that the council can grant exception, because one council will think that's fine, and the next one,
That's why we're making here, and we've been
for years,
for years.
for years. It's all, there's
That was
always
one of the
been
reasons I
exceptions.
wanted to
Um,
fix that.
But I think some of what we're requiring on properties like that, and my view on larger residential lots is forcing people to develop in the county. I mean, how long has it been since we had a plat here to review? Been a while. And it's not that, I mean, there are development and buildings going on in the counties and places, but, I just feel like, and we built a number of them in the county with larger lots. And I just think that I would like to see more of those in the city. I think there's a benefit to have them in the city.
Well, that's where spelling it out for what zones.
Right, that's what I'm saying.
That's what we need to work on.
I think there ought to be a zone for these larger lots, so people could
So we need somebody to
have a 5-acre lot, be in the city, and they wouldn't cost them that.
So to qualify what you just said, I do believe that we need to look at zones and come up with specifics to help each area. I mean, if you look at history, Jared West was proposing that down toward where JR lives, remember they brought that in? And they actually did put the sidewalks there just for the, suppose they never built. But that came to zoning there. But you're talking about, we're not getting that. It's not because we're prohibited, we're costing people an arm and leg because of developers, and like, if you want me to, I'll start naming them. They were selling off their houses in a lot, that's why they quit developing, they weren't making money on this, and that's why we've had a lull in subdivisions. I think we're gonna have an uptake, because everybody thinks we're gonna have a super building boom here. We're getting a lot of interest in properties here and there, and I think we will, whether we get a building or not, but it's not because we're hard to do.
Well, I'm gonna disagree a little bit, Dean, because it does come down, especially on larger parcels.
You're correct on large parts, and that's what I'm saying, we need to adjust our standards to this, but as far as saying that everybody doesn't want to build in Roosevelt. It's just, they gotta be able to sell and make a profit. So I talked to the.
Absolutely, worse the cost up to buy one.
That's the thing, with what our requirements are, obviously that does change a little bit the cost of each lot, and I get that. But the sidewalks in my mind, you have to put curb and gutter in, and that's why I say residential, and you're splitting, if you were to split 60-acre piece up into residential lots, you would have 130 lots to sell, or 140 lots to sell, versus, 5 or 10 or 15. And so, you can recoup those costs a lot better when you're selling, when you buy a property that's, $20,000 an acre, $15,000 to $20,000 an acre, what the going market is for good farm ground right now, which is ridiculous in my mind. But then you subdivide that and get 50,000 per a quarter acre. You know what I mean? So there's a lot easier.
I agree with the zoning should be specified commercial versus industrial versus residential.
Based on lot.
Yeah, based on lot size, yeah.
I would prefer that to be just on the zoning.
Well, yeah, like
If it's resident,
then
residential, it's 5 acres, well, what's the future state of the development? Do we want to not have sidewalks, do we not? But
Let's go back to Gales Acres. That's an R1. There's several of those people that have divided their lots. You get larger parcels, and down the road, they get looking at.
that's my concern, is
Yeah.
what's the future state of this lot?
And who's going to
My lot.
when you do that?
Yes.
It'll always be industrial.
it'll always be industrial.
Okay, we're talking.
Yeah.
So this is always residential,
Industrial.
industrial.
industrial, yeah. So, yeah, I think, Ren, what are your feelings? You feel? You've been kind of quiet.
I think there's a purpose for curb and gutter, and we do need to look at where we do and do not require it.
My first question is, what's the benefit to the city of annexing this? Why would the city want to do this?
Tax base.
What's gonna be,
Well, taxes on most of the buildings down there are $25,000 to $30,000 a year. I don't know what the city receives tax.
We receive a
Revenue out of
small
that.
portion of that, but where's Rhonda? Did she hide?
Let's get into reality here. Steve Seacrest looked at buying that corner parcel that you own where you're gonna build on. In high water years, the water table was 2 feet. It sat there in that hole. He dug a test. I did not think he can get septic approval for Tri-County.
The water
Do the analysis.
It is in spots, without a doubt. I did dig a
He
10-foot
really
deep
needs
hole
to
there.
get sewer in on this parcel to be able to make it.
Yes.
I did dig a 10-foot hole, and that's beside the point, but
And it's right now. Water years, it's sitting at 2 feet, it's sitting there for years.
We did put a drain.
no, I agree.
If you look at the lot that he's proposing, we put a drain just on the north side, just across the fence, to try to keep the water out of the hangars that we built there at the airport. So that is a very big issue. And so water in that area is gonna be, that's why I wish which doesn't help anything. If we had some type of a storm drain system that was incorporated with that, then I would say, yeah, let's do curb and gutter because it'll take the water out of that area and away. It's a tough one right now, how it is, for several reasons, but.
So another question, if they stayed county, what would the county requirements be on that parcel?
Probably pavement.
Right now, as far as I know, I could do a gravel road with
No curb and gutter.
no curb and gutter.
But when it floods out, the county has to fix it. Not the city.
Right.
I'm told there's a subdivision going in over above Duchesne that doesn't even have paved roads.
Really.
Yeah, residential subdivision without paved roads.
Well, and this is
We do not want to be Duchesne.
well, and that's what I was
The
gonna
county is outside of Duchesne.
So this is the conundrum, right? Because if we do require certain things, it is more costly for people to develop. But then it's less burden on the taxpayers of Roosevelt City in the future.
Correct.
So if we don't require it now, then we're pushing the problem down the road to where Roosevelt City eventually is gonna have to assume those liabilities and take care of those problems.
Correct. And a dollar spent now is a whole lot better than a
I
dollar
agree
spent
with that.
10 or 15 years or 20 or 25 dollars.
Exactly. And so I feel like what I'm looking for, we can take back to our council, is a reasonable approach. What is reasonable? Because we can't obviously be like Duchesne. And that's
I said county over there, it's out of the city.
Duchesne County. If we act like Duchesne County, they can run the county how they want. And, they're gonna save $1 today, but spend $3 tomorrow.
We've got a really nice bowling alley.
Yeah, but at the same time, we need to be reasonable, and reasonable. That's what we're looking for. is
I
reasonable.
100% agree. For me, like, it's a non-starter unless you run a cost benefit analysis and there's a benefit for the city to annex it. If there's more
Depending
of
on the
this-
business, let's say you have a
Correct.
business that, well, it has retail, you have sales tax revenue coming into the city.
Can retail be in-
Long term, as we grow, they have control
Yeah,
over
sales.
So
more.
if it's gonna be retail.
Well, not retail, you're industrial retail, it's different, like,
Okay.
Yeah,
We'll have utilities as well. We'll revenue money off utilities, but the tax base is the biggest benefit for the city. We want to be pro annexation to get the revenue to help sustain Roosevelt City.
we just
If
don't
it's
want.
positive for the
There
city.
you go. And maybe that's a good approach too, is to look at it and say, and I agree that the road means that we have to have so there's certain things I hope, who's taking notes? We have minutes too, so.
Yeah,
Because-
sunshine's good.
One of those, we talked about the thickness of the street. We need to make that an industry standard in certain zones that we require this. And we don't leave it up to an engineer that may, or put 3 inches down one day and 4.5 the next.
Just another, we're talking history. Those lots in back of the mountain, when they were approved, they were required to take care of their groundwater. Most of those lots have some kind of detention and actually retention ponds
And that
in
is the
there.
case.
And something like this would be good because like you're saying, at the airport, we get high water. This is put in curb and gutter and brings it to the airport road.
Slopes it down to there.
We're talking about a place they can put in detention, because once it gets there, there's no place to take it from there. So as far as water, we're talking extra water on ground. He develops the parcels. If he's in the city, we should require them to detain their stormwater on each parcel as required.
And that's what the county does. So
Yeah.
Paragon, for example, I have 3 sumps in my driveway that I have to take care of all my own groundwater. It
Yeah.
can't go on to my neighbors.
If
And
it
that's
go, so my question is, if it goes onto your neighbors and causes damage to the neighbors,
You're liable.
you're, okay. That's where that's what I would wanna make sure. is
And
that
so
the
when
city,
Brad,
if his water goes over and ruins the runway,
he's
he's
liable.
liable.
And the other thing is if he sells those lots and then each owner becomes the owner of that 5-acre piece, then each owner of 5 acres is responsible for their groundwater.
Yep, I would want to make sure that was taken care of before it was subdivided, because then that one person that has a 5 acre parcel doesn't take care of their water and doesn't have enough money to pay for the damage that's done when it all runs off. I just come from Eagle Mountain and it was a mess.
Well, we don't want to get in that mess. We want to avoid
You just literally watched
reasonably.
the houses up here, all their rainwater went all the way down to everybody's at the bottoms. There was no storm drains to collect it. Everybody at the bottom got washed out and got flooded.
Have curb and gutter.
Curb and gutter, but it didn't have anywhere to
No,
catch it.
yeah.
It was just going down to the
That's
bottom.
fine, too. We don't have anywhere for it to go.
Yeah, that's my fear. So now you throw somebody on there that's got a 5 acre parcel. They don't have money to pay for the damage that's done. Now who's sitting on that? The city's sitting on that money. That's my concern.
Would it be, and the groundwater is the problem there, so I'm just trying to figure out, I'm luckily where I'm at, I'm high enough above the water table by quite a bit, and I was able to go down several feet and create basins underneath.
Stormwater.
Yeah, for the stormwater. And so,
On a high water year, that could change drastically. I mean, right now I dug a 10-foot hole. And when I put I don't know how the sewer was when Strata put it up through there, but I put the sewer in clear to probably half of it, Dane.
At least, actually. where
And I was down- I was down
where Strata
13
took
feet.
off, They took off with your manhole
Yeah.
going their way.
So I was
And it
13
dry,
feet and
but
never hit water.
On high water years, it's good.
well,
Now, here's the bottom.
Are you planning on doing sewer for all of the parcels before you sell?
Yes.
Now, here's kind of the bottom line, the way I see it, and I understand what JR's saying. I think he's asking for us to create some zones and get this so each area has its own deal, but it's gonna take us a little bit of time. It's not gonna happen overnight. And I totally agree with JR. And
I agree with
so we
that.
don't keep going in a circle. We're not here to figure it out today, but he's asking for us to start looking at zones and construction standards for different zones. Is that correct, JR?
yeah, and to give Brad an idea of where we're headed, so he can make a somewhat calculated decision now whether or not to proceed, because it'll take about the same amount of time, and that's why I told him, so but if we can give him an idea of, you're probably still gonna be looking at, curb and gutter, then he can make this, or, maybe there's a different solution we can look at with that. Pumps or whatever, I don't know, but just so that he has an idea whether or not to start that process. We're going to move forward regardless, I think, if we need to, obviously, but.
How large will the lots be?
I had that drawn up. So they'll be roughly 600 feet deep and 350 feet wide, or something like that. 350 feet wide, I believe, 600 deep.
So to back up. You asking for a recommendation from them to go to council and proceed. Because I really don't think we can make a decision here, yes, no. All we can do is send a recommendation to council and how to proceed.
Well, what's your time frame, Brad?
I do have a guy who wants to be moved in by 1st of January.
Yeah.
So I mean, I gotta get rolling pretty quick,
So those are basically 5 acre lots, really?
5 acre lots.
Would 4 weeks until our next meeting?
Well, I talked to Dean about this at one point. I mean, I could probably go get a building permit through Duchesne County.
Yeah.
Start the building process.
But to do that, you're either gonna have a commitment for sewer or septic.
For
Well,
septic.
yeah, but we're not trying to hold you over, we're not trying to leverage anything either. But, the reason I ask is because I can commit that as a council and as staff and our legal and our planning and zoning, that'll give us 4 weeks to put something together, I think, pretty decent in 4 weeks. That then you could come to, and it would be, then we could give you a almost definite answer of what you'd be.
So if I can get a preliminary septic approved, Dean, and he was to give me a
You go
building
with
permit.
I'm gonna go have a talk with Darren. I'm gonna be a clown. I know Darren, and I know septic, and I know the rules.
Well, yeah, but that's not our,
Too, and I know when they're digging, you gotta.
that's not within our city. That has nothing to do with Roosevelt City at that point. If you go do septic with ground,
No, I'm just saying, so, cause that would get my building under construction and I could start the process of
well,
putting
yeah,
the
but
building up.
what I'm saying is, what Dean's saying is he's gonna go talk to Tri-County. What I'm saying is we shouldn't be talking to anybody. If you're gonna start building and try to get that, and it's in the county, you're well within your right to do whatever. And if we wanna annex in later, after one lot's done, that can happen too.
Well, that's what I'd like to do, is I definitely would like the city sewer and run a paved road all up through there, but
So,
And just to qualify, I'm not going as Dean Roosevelt City, I'm going as a concerned citizen who's been level two septic.
that's okay.
Just to qualify there. I'm not trying to cause you a problem,
No,
of
that's okay.
anything, but I know the problems associated with that area down there we've had to deal with.
I don't disagree.
And but I'd like to give us 4 weeks to get something going. I think we can work with you.
We all know what happens when Tri-County approves septics. Roosevelt City end up.
Yeah, that's what I do.
And that's why it
But
makes sense for us to look at these things and these properties and say,
Help to be beneficial to
can we,
let's
I have a
get them in the city.
how much would it cost? Where's our storm drain from there? How far away is storm drain from that area? I mean,
Drainage in that whole area, we look at it, to go back.
can we get permission, because there's a low spot, that we actually sunk water out for the airport.
You'd have to go out. Where did you take that?
Well, it goes down a natural drainage.
I got this map full of it.
And the reason.
Look at this right here. See this green line?
Parallel that with the storm drain line, to get it to a spot where we can actually get dry.
See this green line right here?
We solved
This
it.
whole area up above here, I'm talking clear this way, groundwater and everything comes to here. The natural drainage above ground goes right to here. It has in the past gone through the airport to here, and right to this point.
Yep.
The airport got drains all over here. Some of the pilots got together and they actually put a drain, which I don't think is totally connected still, but they bought a drain here and along here, and it still empties to here. But if we created, we'd almost have to go in and do storm drainage
That's
and
what I was
actually
gonna
take it
say.
all the way through to here and get it to this
That's
point
what I
to
was
make
gonna
it
say.
work.
And that's what I'm saying, because that area, if it continues to develop, it's gonna be a problem
It's
for that
gonna-
anyway. And if we wanted to have curb and gutter eventually there and actually take the water somewhere, this ends up in Dry Gulch drainage eventually. It goes behind.
Correct, it goes down the refinery and
So
comes
if we
out.
could get
down
water
by-
actually storm drain and then actually done something. That's kind of the topic for another thing, but
Yeah.
only other than if you're doing sewer lines and we can parallel sewer with storm and get it to a certain spot and then finish that out at some point. Give us.
Yeah, I gotta be honest, Brad just came and talked to us. It was a one-time deal, it's first we had heard of. Afterwards, staff kind of had some thoughts. I don't think not having curb and gutter is a killer, but a proper road is, the proper ways to handle it, with proper shoulders. I think it's doable, but it's something that's not in our ordinance. And so it's something that we've got to look at. Give us some
So
time.
at this point, I think we just need to look at it and say, let's get the attorney involved and get something drawn up to clarify and split up or better define requirements for different zones.
And would you guys be willing to meet an extra time in between now and the next meeting as a work meeting that we could come to and work on that? And maybe even by that time, or it might not be a month, Brad, maybe it's a couple weeks. Then in a couple of weeks, we'll have a lot better idea. And in the meantime, Dean, we can get together, Drew, the city attorney, and with recommendations from council, look at these and at least a decent, better idea in a couple of weeks. And then if that looks like the way we're gonna go, then you'll,
I think it's a good idea.
I'm fine exploring that, but the more that I look at this, I go, why in the Sam Hill would we not want curb and gutter near there? Like, what's the future state of what we want that airport to look like? Why wouldn't we want that to be something that could grow into, there's rental cars, there's something that's commercial that, like, what's that gonna look like in 10 years?
and I think curb and gutter makes, that's why I'm trying to think of a way to get the water out of there, because then curb and gutter makes 100% sense.
Yeah.
But right now,
And just so you know, when they proposed, sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you, but when they proposed it, sitting down, Ryan already, they actually proposed along this road to do some pits along here as detention pits that would absorb the water off of there coming there. It would just be the road. that
And
would
you
drain
want
in
it
there.
lined with some rock put in there.
Right, we had talked about, some linings, some rock pits, that where it could even be covered with fabric or something that would look good, that would actually detain the water there, but it would just handle this roadway. It wouldn't handle the properties there, because the properties wouldn't drain
Can
to it.
we set up a work session meeting, and then I think we can probably
yeah,
get everything done.
Yeah, let's be mindful of everyone else that's here too.
yeah, we could brainstorm for, this will give us 2 weeks
Yeah.
to brainstorm, bring those ideas to the next meeting.
Ryan, whereabouts on the map, where is that 10-foot pit you're talking?
What 10-foot pit?
The-
Where you got first.
So I dug my test hole just a couple of weeks ago, right there. So this guy, he wants 10 acres of ground. He wants it 680 feet long this way, so 680 this way. So I kind of put it right there, just where he wanted his building,
And you're down 10 feet and there's no water?
no water.
The
One-
natural grade, that's the high point.
That's a high point.
And so towards the,
It's down a little bit, but
yeah, it's not much, but.
Yeah. I dug the hole like right here, and I mean, basically the high points, it's flat from this sewer line. From this sewer line to here is flat,
If you're annexed in though, you're gonna go into the sewer, right?
yes.
Yeah, he would have to.
And the city cannot provide, they have an agreement with Johnson Water, so so I have Johnson Water here.
That's out of our.
And so it's already in agreement with Johnson Water, they have to provide the
Yeah,
water.
we fixed that. We don't want to agree to it. We don't want to open that.
And for Keith's information, we're in a dry spell. When they actually did the sewer, just like Brad said, when it was coming up the road in 1600, it was all dry. But you take it 10 years ago, it
Is
wasn't. So it
that-
just depends on the water cycles.
Is that sewer line, sorry, I mean, I'll just ask 2 quick questions, and I'll be quiet. Is the sewer line right in the center of that new road?
It's on the north side of the shoulder of the road, and it's 8 inch.
And, how big of a storm drain? Well, let's have the engineers look at the storm drain, because if we can come across that, because I know that sewer line heads north and stubs out onto Roosevelt City's property.
It goes to that manhole just out the.
So if we can get close to that sewer line, come across, and then take that same easement down there, then we can get it over to the drainage. I would like to see it come out of the drainage further down. But just for other reasons, but anyway,
Is that something you want Jones and Middle look at for engineering?
if it wouldn't cost that much, I think we ought to look at just to get an idea of what the cost is.
So
Because-
tonight, let's just plan on maybe having a work meeting in a couple weeks or so.
Do you want to set the date now?
We do actually have set dates, I think, don't we? Nobody else will speak on that.
Should know this with time.
I'd say best thing is go to council, come up with direction.
When's your-
And I think.
Council meeting is Tuesday, right?
Well, I don't disagree, Dean, but this is why we have the planning and zoning
Right,
commission.
it's our job to.
Because these guys are non-political board, meaning they can't be swayed by elections and things, so I'd really like, some thoughts and ideas to go in this before it goes to council. And when is their council meeting? So 17th, and what's 2 weeks from today, the 18th?
I won't be here the 18th.
What if you met?
11th is
They'd
next
have to
week.
meet before council's meeting in 2 weeks. We'd have to,
to meet.
maybe meet like next Wednesday or something, or Saturday.
Yeah, that'll only give you a week to get it on.
The 11th would work.
And if we do, I'd appreciate it if Jared comes to help us. 'Cause you're always.
We're gonna have more than just me, we'll have, 'cause this is a major undertaking, this is the way we want to do things, is collaboratively and with all the minds together so that we get it the best it can be from here on out.
It's a massive opportunity for the city
And
if it's done
council
right.
plans, like
Yeah.
that. You're both in the same room at the same
That
time.
could be a big.
What's that?
Yeah.
Council and planning.
That's their-
Yeah.
Then passed on because.
Yeah.
Committee from the council.
Because you get a lot of things thrown out where you're, is a priority, you get, we want this, what do you think?
The 16th would be the Monday before council. What that date was.
Would you guys be okay on the Monday before council?
I'll be at a conference.
I think I could.
Good.
Could be Zoom, you, Tom.
It's a work meeting,
You know what?
no decisions will be made.
The 16th could work.
Do what you don't.
The 16th could work.
So, yeah, let's say 16th, let's just plan on the 16th, have a work meeting. Time. 5:30 or 6, what do we want? You want the same time or do you want to go 6?
Earlier the better for me.
5:30,
And if we're gonna do this, I'd recommend everybody studies the, our building standards and, chapter 16, our requirements for subdivisions.
Yeah.
Especially this, this particular chapter we brought up there on.
Send some links.
We can send that.
Yeah, send those links.
And I really look seriously at what kind of zones do we want to create. I mean, I'm just trying to say, start thinking real
And
hard.
Dean, maybe it'd be good if next Tuesday, you come in with, city manager and I and the attorney, and Drew, and preliminarily,
Those some ideas out here.
get some things going there.
Okay.
What's the big rush?
He's gonna get it.
I have a guy who wants to be moved in his building by December 1st.
Well, that,
One guy?
It's a trucking company.
And really, Tommy, what we really need, all we need to decide is come to a consensus of what we want to see happen, whether we require the curb and gutter or not, and those types of things. And look at those types of things enough to where we have a sure enough answer that he then can make a decision whether
He wants to annex or go.
just do it through the county, yeah.
Yeah, I would like to annex. I think it'd be beneficial to the city and to me.
But we just need to get all of the, is it gonna be lights? Is it gonna be lights, curb and gutter? Is it gonna be lights, curb and gutter, sidewalk? What are we gonna do? And I think we need to have a pretty decent answer at that next meeting so that he can make a decision based on it.
an annexation, if it's really pushed, it's lucky if it's 3 months. The last one, I think it's set with the lieutenant governor forever. And he, until he finally decided to send us back, and that's kind of the problem too, is it takes a while.
At least on our end, we can do it.
3 months is a,
Best
if everything happens,
Right.
No, we're not talking.
Sounds good, let's move on.
let's go ahead, Jared, get this meeting going.
Let's go ahead and move on to our next item on the agenda.
Yeah, thank you
Okay,
for
thank you.
being patient.
Thanks for the discussion, it was fun. Okay, tiny homes. Time for some more fun.
So, tiny homes. We've had some inquiries on tiny homes, and the purpose for this tonight was just for public comments, for you guys to kind of get your feet wet and get some data. We did put out a survey. Sunshine has done a wonderful job with that. We have had a lot of public comment.
Was this wasn't listed as a public hearing?
No, this is not a public hearing, it's just public comment. So I don't know if you guys have had a chance to look over the comments, found you have had some questions that we responded to.
Did you delete all the profanity?
I don't think I will speak this time.
Sunshine had
That'll
a
be
wonderful response.
We just don't want those on our. So we'll turn some time over to Sunshine. She was the one who prepared this and.
So I don't want to take up a ton of time. I just thought I'd run through the questions really quick. I wish the first question, I wish the data was a little more clear. But I think the two main things I want to call your attention to here are the green bars, which that indicates the strongest level of approval for tiny homes in various areas, right? So this green bar here, you can see quite a few people were actually pretty receptive to the idea of a tiny home being built in a vacant lot next to their home. And then you see down here where we have only permitted in their own zones, a decent number of people actually wanted them to be approved more widely rather than just regulated to their own zone, which I thought was interesting.
So the green is strongly against?
Yes.
Doing that?
Mhm.
Okay, so, okay.
So
And these are broken
in a
down here.
vacant lot next to their home, they strongly
So if you look,
against.
yeah, so they wouldn't want it next to their house. 31.5% of respondents would
Okay.
not want it next to their house at all under any circumstances.
Unless their kids want to live there.
Yeah, and that was something that came up a lot in the comments actually with parents and kids.
Yeah, we saw.
Accessory storage buildings. This question related to the size for accessory storage buildings. So as you can see, most people were pretty interested in making sure that you didn't have an accessory storage unit that was, 3 times the size of your house. And this doesn't relate just to tiny houses, but to accessory storage units overall, specifically the shipping containers.
Bug out,
And
bunkers.
so obviously a lot of people really are concerned about the appearance of shipping containers. I can imagine in a residential area, you don't want a big industrial shipping container in your neighbor's backyard. Lot size requirement, a lot of people thought that yes, there should be a minimum lot size requirement. However, when we look at what that requirement should be, it's pretty evenly split, and a lot of people have no real input.
Yeah, I don't think they know that answer.
Yeah, I kind of assumed as much, but you never know. Off-street parking, 70% of respondents thought that there should be the same standards for tiny houses as, normal residences. 30% were okay with tiny homes only having one space. And then this is the fun part. I'm not going to go over most of these. I will note that, there were a lot of concerns about the appearance of tiny homes, whether that's individually or as like their own little zone, little subdivisions. There was a lot of concern about their upkeep and maintenance. There was also concern about, livability standards, and that's obviously a building code issue, not a zoning issue, but those were things that people brought up. And then, the strongest, what I saw as the strongest comment against tiny homes was usually relating to, looking odd in their area, or again, like the cleanliness issue. And there were some arguments for tiny homes, chiefly affordable housing and, having your parents live in your backyard when they're elderly, that sort of thing. So that's what I got for you, unless you have any questions for me.
Okay, well, does everybody understand the definition of a tiny home?
That's what I was curious about. Was that definition brought forward in the?
Well,
Yes.
the IRC is not adopted yet. It does have a section now on tiny homes. Basically, it's 400 square feet or less on a home. But there's a lot of misconception. If you have a tiny home and it's on trailers, that's not a tiny home. That is an RV or a.
Say that PCN.
On wheels. If it's on
And
wheels.
a lot of people have concerns about tiny homes on wheels. If it's a tiny home and it's on wheel, that is not a tiny home. That is an RV or a mobile home. Trailer parks, people can park on their property. The issue we're talking about here is a small home on a foundation on a parcel of land. Just so you understand what we're actually trying to achieve here, and do we want to zone for them or what? A lot of people have an idea that you can build a tiny home, put it on wheels and call it a tiny home. It is a tiny home, but technically it's an RV
I'm glad you clarified, because I was confused.
So I feel like it's just that.
What are the city rules pertaining to RVs?
RVs, they're supposed to be put in mobile home parks.
And we're not permitting any more mobile home park.
No.
So a tiny home on wheels would have to go into a
Mobile home park. I mean, they could buy a piece of land, but then they'd be living in an RV.
people, in the city of Roosevelt, are people allowed to live in an RV
They are,
as a permanent residence?
they are not. Just in mobile home parks.
So would a tiny home fall into the same category that
On wheels it would.
it can't be a permanent residence?
So.
If it has wheels, if they put it on a foundation or a slab, then you could live.
The definition of a tiny home would include foundation and all services being permanent.
So if somebody buys a tiny home built in Indiana, it's on wheels, comes out here,
It's not-
they take the wheels out, they put it on a foundation.
There you go. It's a foundation.
You know, one of my thoughts is that if we're gonna need, if we're gonna need these and they're gonna be temporary, it'd be nice to have something that would be movable and could go to somewhere else, when it's not needed here any longer, instead of having a whole bunch of tiny homes that I don't think nobody wants.
They're not.
Yeah, that was my question.
It's permanent.
Tiny home is going to be permanent.
So,
Well,
sorry, I'm not part of that.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I'm just public, so treat me that.
Yes.
Seriously, I shouldn't be interrupting, I apologize. Have we looked at what Allreds has done behind Maverick on this?
Yes,
And what have they done?
not much.
2 bedroom.
well,
Yeah.
is it on foundation?
That's what I was wondering.
Is it on a foundation?
No.
No.
No, but it's.
See,
But it's an RV.
But he's in an RV park, so they don't need to be.
That's the exception.
And they own them and rent it.
That's true.
The tiny
Owner
home.
occupied. These are, the idea of the tiny homes are for minimalist living.
Yeah, we're not talking about, from my understanding, solving the issue of needing 2,000 homes for the 2,000 workers that are
No.
supposedly going to come in. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about building
That's
tiny
what I was
homes.
thinking about.
Yeah,
Yes.
these are for minimalist living.
This wouldn't be transient.
This is for, homes in our area are $350,000 for just your average.
Correct.
And so, if you're looking at a newlywed couple or something like that, that's looking for a place to stay, they can't find an apartment, or they would like to invest in something that they actually own, then they can find. When I was married, those $350,000 homes were $45,000, and now it's gonna cost our children $45,000 to get into this little dinky home, and I think that's what
Minimum
you're
wage
saying, and
was
that's true.
Yeah, I can't figure it out.
Just to add, as far as for Lindenville, there's been some questions by some people in town as far as creating smaller homes, tiny homes for rentals. My recommendation has been, they need to create PUDs. Because we're not zoned for it, they create a PUD, design the streets and infrastructure to city specs. They come into zoning and gets it approved with a homeowners association. And they want to create rentals, that's what they need to do. This is not.
Correct. That's my question.
Sections of lands, just not throughout. They have to create a PUD in their land, 4 acres, 5 acres, whatever. Then they can do what they want in city limits. They have to create a PUD.
What
And if they want
problem?
city services, they have to do roads and infrastructure connections.
And to give you an idea, one of the members that approached me and probably Dean and others, he's one of the partners and I don't know if he's the owner of the House of Hope in Ioka. And so he has these people that are graduating from this House of Hope that need a place to go. They can't find anywhere to rent. He has a piece of property where he can put some tiny homes and have that an area where they can go and live and actually move on and, to the next steps and continue to progress. And so that's one of the
But he's
reasons.
thinking of renting.
Renting.
Yeah,
This is a.
The research that I've done
What?
your son was one, I think, too, that he was thinking of renting. He wasn't looking at selling, he was just thinking of putting a couple on his property to
Yeah.
rent.
So the research that I've found is the majority of these tiny homes are not for housing. You're not
They're
gonna have a
rentals.
married, they're rentals.
Yeah.
Like they're advertised as rentals. They have them in Springdale. A gentleman that I work with is buying one. It's in Springdale. You hire a management company that manages the property. You come and use it like a timeshare. You're 2 or 3 weeks out of the year, and the rest of the time the management company rents it out.
That's how I look at it. I don't think
They,
that many
these
of
are
them
not
would be.
permanent residents, in my opinion, that are gonna solve the crisis of having affordable housing. This is gonna be, hey, we want a tiny house so that we can rent it out, so people can come here and fish and hunt and hike and.
Or people like coming out of the house of hope can have a place to live while they get their life organized and move on to the next phase.
Correct, which I'm fine with, like, let's define the problem that we're trying to solve, but if we're saying that.
But that falls back on housing, right? If you can't afford to buy a house, it's affordable for those who want to rent or only can afford to rent. So affordable housing, yes. However,
But how affordable are they?
here, so that's the
But
affordable.
before we go much further, we actually asked the public to come in and make us some comment before we go any further. If somebody's here to do that, I think we ought to give them a chance to
Yes.
kind of give us their input, because that's what we're asking for, is how do they want us to proceed? So it might not hurt to let whoever's here to speak to us, and then we continue our conversation.
I'm just here to listen mostly. I am in part of the tiny home part of it, so, but I'm kind of curious to get feedback from all of you guys, so.
Your name?
Wyatt,
Yeah. No other comment?
not at this time.
Yeah, me and my wife are from Provo. We moved up to town. I'm out here. But
Come on up to.
Come up so they can hear you.
well, I didn't think that.
The address and your social security.
So me and my wife are from Provo. We moved out here for we got brunch myself. And we would like to live in a tiny home for permanent residence. So that was our goal. But our family is worried about us being being empty house. We're mammals. There's a lot of us coming up in this direction.
So what kind of square footage are you thinking about?
400. We stay in one for my birthday. It's actually pretty fun.
For the record, he is not 6 foot.
Yeah, very short. No, I think it's short.
Did you have something, Nancy?
I think there's a place for them, but I also think some building companies, the construction people around here need to start building smaller homes on smaller lots for older people who want their single place, but they don't want to maintain an acre of land, maybe even half an acre of land, because they're older. We don't want to have grass and water and
lazy.
stuff. And we're lazy. We get a little lazy. Yeah, well, you wear out. Is what it is. Lazy, but you wear out.
Well, I'm talking about me. I do become lazy now.
Some of the builders need to make smaller homes. I know there's some building going on Pole Line Road. They're gonna be what, 3 acre lots, 5 acre lots? 1
That is in
acre?
the county.
Yeah, that's the county.
Yeah, the ideal situation, what you're talking about, would be like they have up there, where they created that PUD. I think they're twin homes.
Kind of a single.
They're
Instead of-
complex.
Singles, something like that. That's what would be ideal. But not people talking about it.
So I don't know how you get the builders to, because I'm sure that's not financially productive.
And there are lots in Riviera, you know, where some of them been for sale for quite a while. Sold. I just had a couple and sold them recently. But,
Small.
2 of them are being built on, and they've just had a call on the third, I think, these.
So,
I think there's a place for the tiny homes, for young, old, whatever,
well,
individually owned. tiny homes.
what, go ahead.
Well, my perfect world would be my townhome where I live now with like 10 feet from my neighbors. Like, I don't even care, but just that.
Space.
And I'll be set. I'm happy.
10-foot buffer between.
Just a 10-foot buffer. Someone wants to share the wall.
And that's
it, and I'm done. I'll be happy forever.
That's funny that we brought that up because in my mind, you look at the townhomes that just went up. And I would say, I don't know the exact numbers, but based on what I've seen, there's a large percentage of those that are owned by somebody other than who's living there.
Yeah, they're mostly rented.
And so what I'm concerned about, what I'd be concerned about as a citizen is that they don't end up looking like the trailer parks that we currently have in Roosevelt City. And I think we probably ought to look at that along with this and say, how do we want them to look? What kind of ordinance are we gonna create? And,
Oh, there's beautiful ones. The one that my colleague is purchasing is gorgeous.
Yeah.
They can look pretty good up at
Yeah.
the exterior. I think it depends on
And the
Yeah, you need
interior,
standards.
they
and that's what I'm saying.
contract.
What can we do to clean up our trailer parks? Treat it similar to a trailer park where somebody can pull a trailer in and rent it to somebody else if they want, or they can, you have somebody own the tiny home themselves in there. It makes no difference. However, there is a set requirement of how the yards to look, how the upkeeps to be, and things like that.
May I make a comment?
Yeah.
You're hitting it right on the head. I've come here to actually look at purchasing the trailer parks in town. And because there's eyesore, right? And I've talked with some, not quite.
Black Rock.
Not quite, I wish. But yeah, that hits it right on the head is, yeah, I see that and I can see where there's an opportunity to clean up the city, take those individuals that are there and bring in something new like tiny homes and do dry scapes or zero scape. So you don't have water issues, you have a maintenance company that maintains the facility. That's kind of the reason I'm here looking at projects. And the other thing is this gentleman hit it right on the head too. My middle daughter, they don't want a big house. They want to travel the world.
They're not
So-
necessarily requires their experience.
Yeah, so they are looking for something that's just a small place. They can come and go as they want. It's maintained by another company and they can travel the world. And that's what they do currently, her and her husband. So, and I see that trend more and more in the younger generation.
Yeah, so we bought the home, but we bought it to build equity to buy a tiny home. That was the whole purpose we even did it, because we can only afford a home out here. But yeah, we work from home, and everyone does now apparently.
A huge percentage works remote.
Yeah.
So, Steve, just real quick, and I think that would be part of your recommendation, what we would require is CCNRs, HOAs, in order to keep the aesthetics of the home and the neighborhood.
Standard up.
You know, not so.
Which kind of leans more towards a PUD anyway.
Exactly,
Yes.
and that's the intention, I think.
Yeah.
And retroactively make it a zoning, or within a residential zone, it's zoned RSN for residential small homes. I don't really care. But, and then treat the trailer park, and then we move the trailer parks into those zones too. And then see if we can't do just what Wyatt?
Yeah.
Wyatt said and bring them up to the same standard that we're requiring.
Tiny homes, are you gonna require them to be sewer? Are you gonna require curb gutters? Are you gonna
Yep.
require sidewalks?
Curb and
So
gutter, sidewalk,
they have to abide
everything.
by
All of it.
the codes, the same code as what a stick-built home would be required to do.
It's just a problem.
One thing I was gonna mention, we have employed RCC, Rural Community Consultants. It's a branch off of Jonesboro Mill. They are coaching us a little bit on the tiny homes. They're looking at what other cities are doing. They're gonna throw to us for your review, I think, by next month.
Yeah, no.
Were they part? Have you seen the canals?
They may have. They were
Is it like
in Utah.
hiking trails?
Our city here, so we've employed them, give them the direction to look into, you know, what are other cities doing, and give us recommendations for you to look at, so we don't have to reinvent the wheel.
Yeah, I'm not against it. I just, I want to be able to get you clear on something. Issue that we're trying to solve is affordable housing.
It's maintained and
Also,
we would just need.
from my understanding, I don't think these homes appreciate value.
Yes,
I think they would fall
So I-
into the category.
10 feet.
Value as well.
Yeah, I would be.
It's hard to say.
Yeah, doesn't that
It
depend on
is.
foundation? Does that depend on foundation? So if it has foundation, basically that like increased property value, like.
When you get out of the real estate industry, has the appreciation value as far as the home goes?
If it's on a foundation.
Well,
Right now-
mobile homes,
So,
maybe.
right, right. Mobile foundation, we're talking about a foundation.
You got a home on a foundation for the most part.
You're only getting.
Yeah, that's the
Let's keep in
difference with
touch with you,
inflation
sure, 'cause
versus
I'm interested in
appreciation.
how many transition.
But like,
For the
the
individual.
manufactured homes,
They
for
do
the
need
most part,
transition housing.
Yes, this would not be,
So that they can actually.
I don't think that's going to be considered.
If they're built to, these would have to be built to the building, so they're a little bit more substantial.
so slab,
They would, they could,
No, they can do slab on grade, but they still have to have protection.
Yeah, same.
you know, we go through ups and downs in our economy, and these would be some of the first things that would go, you know, could go down. I mean, it would be some of the first places vacant. You know, from 86 to 90, we lost 15% of the population of our county, and so if you own these things, I mean, we had apartments we owned, we had Fort Windrise. A lot of people, you know, I mean, but these would be that kind of a risk, you know.
or it comes into Airbnb galore.
That's another thing you're gonna have to tackle here soon.
Which
Could discuss.
I'm not against those, it's just we have to be mindful that Airbnb is gonna mean more traffic. It's not gonna be 2 cars, it's probably gonna be 3. Tiny homes it may not, because there's not
One of
enough
the
room.
questions is parking and that, one of the comments was composting toilets. They're required to have service.
Yeah.
City services,
Compost.
water, sewer, all of this, not compost toilets.
Yeah.
I didn't see that comment.
I think the purpose was just to get your minds thinking. We don't have to hurry with this one.
No.
We just trying to get you information and then we're gonna bring it up. We're gonna start making notes and walk you with it. We'll start working on this.
Just keep moving on.
What are we thinking zoning wise? I think that's the biggest issue is where you're gonna put them.
But I think we're gonna create a zone with a lot size and it can be put anywhere within the city as long as it's an acreage and it can be, it's gonna be a zone in itself.
You
I
can
think we
make
have
a
to-
suggestion on
Right.
where they're able to go.
I think we have to basically determine the sizes of what lots are, create the zone. To me, it's something that we create the definitions and then those who want to develop, see if they fit with where they want to put.
And the neighbors have a voice in that.
Kind of like, we created twin home ordinance, so we can have all that. And we haven't said, well, we want twin homes on this part of town. No, when somebody comes, we let that discussion come here and be discussed with the public hearing, so the neighbors can get their opinion in and everything else. I think, to me, that's how it should be, as the government entity, we don't say what goes where necessarily, we give the definitions and kind of let the market help decide.
What about mandates on exterior?
So it depends, like we were discussing with, about a PUD, if they want to develop a whole area, they would do a PUD, which then has all those requirements as part of the PUD.
Yeah, I don't think we can regulate what they build and what their exterior is. If somebody's developing properties, they should put in their.
Yeah. Yeah, CCNRs or HOAs.
I would almost, and I don't disagree, somebody putting their covenants, but I think that the city ought to have a minimum requirement of, or minimum expectation, what's to happen with those properties. Otherwise,
Yeah.
HOAs don't.
Correct, HOAs go bankrupt and nobody runs them.
If we have the covenants that were set up, the city, we could adopt those and enforce them or something as far as that goes.
Well, we just list those covenants or whatever those requirements are in the zoning ordinance. So it specifies if you
Yes.
own this, you meet these requirements.
Yes.
and then we're gonna hire an ordinance officer to enforce it. But we're looking at that anyway.
Nancy, you wanna do something fun? Walk the neighborhood and take pictures?
Done. I have one community, but no.
Any other comments on the tiny homes or any? If not, move on. Do we have any other things that need to be brought up tonight? If not, I would entertain the motion to adjourn. So, Eileen? Second by Tommy, all in favor? Everybody coming tonight?
Yeah.
Yes.
Perfect, thank you.
That sounds like something. No, I'm waiting.
Thank you.
Tommy, no shower.